yesterday, I think, of those missiles as they made their way into Israeli territory. But your initial thoughts is seeing some of these images and hearing about the reports.
Yes, I mean, we've seen what has been going on. The skies were lit with missiles that, hypersonic, some of them that were thrown, by Iranians, against the Israelis. This is the second time in 6 months, Naledi, that, the Iranians, are, sending hundreds of missiles, against Israel, and particularly targeting a critical infrastructure, especially the Iranian military, sites, as the Israeli military sites, as Iran says. This is, getting us very close to a further escalation of the crisis since the unfortunate incident on October 7th, when Hamas launched a brazen attack, on Israel, and Israel decided to retaliate, as we've seen. And that retaliation has led to an increase in conflict in the Middle East, with Lebanon getting involved, attacks against in Yemen, in Syria, but also in Iran, and assassinations of Hezbollah leaders and all that, has led to a further escalation of this conflict. And there are many fears, Naledi, that this could escalate into a third world war. Although many have already said that we're actually in the third world war, but it hasn't extended as much as we saw during the First and the Second World War, and simply because it only takes two sides to escalate a global war. And of course, the UN has become increasingly helpless. Just retaining strong words of condemnation and calling for ceasefire. So it's getting worse by the day, and there are continuous fears that this is not the end, especially with the fact that Israel has promised that it will also retaliate.
Yeah. What do you say to that argument then? That, I mean, and we looked at the social media trends this morning also, World War III trending, about, what in your view, and you've already talked about, I suppose, would make up a World War III, but the role that should be played by the international community at this point. You've got Joe Biden, for instance, who has come out and saying that, reiterating that Israel is, of course, an ally of the U.S. Is the U.S. using the right of voice in this time? And what is it that the international community should be doing? And perhaps even what African countries should be doing. We know that South Africa's been incredibly outspoken around the violence between Gaza and Israel, taking it all the way to the International Justice Court, arguing that this is a genocide that's taking place in Gaza. What should South Africa be saying? What should the international community be saying at this time?
I think South Africa has been sounding the right voice, and not just, about talking, but they've also been walking the talk, in the sense that, South Africa has been the only country that, has pushed this to the point of taking, the matter to the International Court of Justice, where Israel was found, to have engaged, itself in genocidal, acts, But I think more needs to be done. I think not just South Africa alone. Africa has 54 countries. And they do have the African Union. I think this is, a very strong position. But the biggest issue, Naledi, is that none of these 54 African countries, despite having a huge impact on the United Nations with 28%, of the votes on the General Assembly, which is the highest percentage, none of them belong to the 5 permanent members of the United Nations with veto power. So the 5 permanent members, the UK, US, France, China, and Russia, with the veto power, exclusively control what happens in the international scene. So it becomes very difficult for any country that does not have that veto power to make decisions. So what we're seeing now, Naledi, from my own experience with other wars, is that the members who consists of the 5 permanent members, of course, are split in the middle in terms of their support for either, in this instance, Palestine or Gaza, if you may, and of course, Israel, which, America has made it quite clear that, they will support Israel. Come rain, come shine. So it's a very challenging geopolitical situation, and what we're effectively seeing here is a clear sign that we are experiencing a third world war. It doesn't have to be the same like the First and the Second World War. These wars were never fought in all countries, but what we're seeing now is that there is enough, to say that the entire members of the UN are either supporting one side or the other. And this is what consists, of a global war. And the fear is that it will escalate this time beyond the Middle East.
Yeah, really something to think about. The director for the Geneva Centre for African Strategic and Security Studies there, David Otto, essentially saying that with all the elements in place right now, with the violence in the Middle East, the 180 missiles launched towards Israel yesterday, and the position taken by countries that are very much leadership members of the UN, he believes we are now in a World War III. Share your thoughts with us at Newzroom 405. All right, on to the story now. So the cash-strapped Mfuleni local municipality workers have not received